How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan. This is All You Can Board. Last month was an awesome gaming month for me. Not in terms of volume, in terms of how many games I played, even though I did play, I think like a dozen or a little bit more, but just in terms of the actual games I got to the table. I played a bunch of new games for the very first time, and I played some old classics, or at least classics to me, ones that I enjoy playing, and revisited and had a really good time as well. So I thought that what I would do is go through my top 10 plays of last month, because honestly, trying to rank all of these in a top 10 was quite the exercise for me. These are some really good games, and honestly, there's a few that could have been number one. It was I had to really sit down and think and remember parts of the sessions, the parts that made me laugh, and the parts that made me laugh, the parts that made me cry. Nothing made me cry, but just to actually figure out what was going to go into number one, because there were so many possibilities. There was just so many great games I played last month. So we're going to jump into it with number 10. Number 10 is a game I have played before. It is one of 4 games in the series, and this is Azul Stained Glass of Sintra. I talked about Azul a couple times on these, looking back at the last month videos, but I have not played Sintra in a long time. And the reason specifically that we wanted to get this to the table, Carlo and I, is because pretty soon we're going to be doing an Azul comparison video of all 4 Azuls and what we think about them, which ones are our favorites, which ones we think you should start with, things like that. And Sintra was the one I hadn't played in a very long time that I wanted to, refresh my memory on and make sure that I remembered all the mechanics, remember what I did like about it, what I don't like about it. And even though this is coming in at number 10, this is a very solid play. I remembered why I enjoyed Sintra so much. Honestly, the first few times I played it when I first bought it, I kind of went through that phase of, do I like this more than the original Azul? Which I think is sort of those rose-colored glasses people get on with new games. Sometimes you have to play a game, a certain number of times or have it in your collection for a couple months before you can kind of get past that, it's the excitement of the new, and actually properly rank it. So even though I don't think that's the case, you'll have to wait until our Azul video to find out. I had such a blast with this game. It is honestly such a great version of Azul, and it's testament to the fact that normally when we have a popular game like Azul, and whatever that game may be, and they start making different iterations or sequels or follow-ups or whatever the case to it, generally it's trying to recapture that magic of the original, and they never quite do it. And every game after, either even if they don't all get progressively worse or anything like that, they don't ever live up to the feeling of the original. In terms of that, Azul is probably one of the series that gets the closest in my books to actually having every game live up to what made the original so special. They take elements and aspects of Azul so that you're familiar with and hold on to them and keep them, but then they iterate on it and they evolve on it, and they have an entirely new way to place your tiles, entirely new tiles to use, and I love it. I love all the versions of Azul. This is a great one. If you haven't played this one, especially if you only played the second one, I'd highly I recommend trying this one out, because it's very different while still being familiar to the original. You still have these circles in the middle that you're pulling tiles from. You still have the same rules and how you're doing that, but the placement is 100% different, and it adds in this really cool element of having this figure at the top that kind of dictates where you can and can't place tiles. Everything to the right you can place on, anything to the left you can't, and so you're constantly having to move that around to be able to place the tiles that you grab most effectively. Very cool system. Highly recommend you check it out. That is Azul Stained Glass of Sintra. Next up, coming in at number 9, this one's going to be a game I don't own because Carl owns it, and I played it a few times with him, and I think, how many times have I played it now? 3 or 4, and I played it again this last month. I've talked about it, I believe, before, but I'm talking about it again. This is Fantasy Realms, coming in at number 9. I really, really enjoy this game. It's such a simple little card game. There's not a lot to it. It's basically a hand management game. Like, you have a hand of cards. Each of them have numbers in the top left that are your points. When the game ends, you're going to add up all those points as well as on card abilities, and whoever has the most points wins. Very simple, but it's this combo aspect of it that I find is most intriguing, and kind of it invites me back every single time. Basically, the game's going to end, I think it's when you have 10 face-up cards on the table, which is your discards. It could be 12, I can't remember. I think it's 10. And you can either choose from the top of the deck blind, or you can choose from the face-up cards that are available on your turn. And all the cards have different other cards that they work in conjunction with. So one card might say, this card is worth 20 points, but if it has, for every wizard you also have in your hand, you get an additional 10 points. And every card has a type, like wizard, or I can't remember all of them, but they're all listed on the bottom of the card. And so you have to sort of figure out which cards to keep, which cards to get rid of at the most opportune times, looking at what's available on the table, taking some blind draws when you need to kind of fill in those gaps, and you might adjust on the fly. You might all of a sudden pick up 2 combo pieces that you're like, okay, I'm only 1 away. Maybe I do go for this combo, but if I want to go for that combo, I got to abandon something else that I'm doing. Here's this great card, but it has this really negative card ability that's going to wipe out my other card abilities. Well, if I get this artifact, it says it wipes out the negatives. So you end up having to like most effectively craft a hand, and you're never going to, you can strategize as much as you want. You can be as tactical as you want. You're never going to get away from there being some luck element in Fantasy Realms, but that's sort of what brings you back multiple times. The game goes super quick. Generally, I would imagine that you're either playing only one game because it's in conjunction with other games, and this is sort of like, starting the night, ending the night, a filler in between, or you're sitting down, you're playing like a best of 3 or a best of 5 of this. Like there's enough here that I think that's totally reasonable to do. So it's a game I want to own myself now. I believe there's a deluxe version of this game coming out, sort of, Sushi Go has the Sushi Go Party version. I think that's kind of what Fantasy Realms Deluxe is. I think it combines a bunch of different promos and expansions they may have had into one package. I think I'm going to pick that up because honestly, I love this game a lot, and I could easily see this being as one of my go-tos in terms of, hey, we have 20 minutes. Let's throw down a quick game. Fantasy Realms would be a great option, or like I said, to start around tonight. Great game. If you haven't checked it out and you can find yourself a copy, I'd highly recommend it. That is Fantasy Realms at number 9. Number 8, this one's going to be a bit, I don't want to say a cheat, but in this video I'm combining expansions with the base game just because I obviously played the expansion with the game itself. So in this case, it is going to be a game we have talked about on the channel very recently, and that is The Loop and The Loop Revenge of Fozilla. So I'm going to lay this down because it's just going to tip. It's an empty box. I put all the components into the main box, so it's kind of just here for show. I have talked a lot about The Loop on the channel already, so you may already know my thoughts about this. I won't spend too much extra time other than to say this is a phenomenal cooperative game, and also in terms of accessibility. And I mean that in the sense of playing with families, with maybe younger players, or just people that don't play board games very often. I think cooperative games are a great, I've said this before, but are a great option for people who don't play board games very often and are either really eager to play one or you're wanting to introduce the game to them. Sometimes the competitive nature of games can be the barrier there. Oh, I don't play games very often. I know I'm going to lose or I'm going to make the wrong decision. You've played this game before. You're going to have to like hold back, or I'm just going to feel like I'm being destroyed. Like there's so many things that could be a barrier. If you want to sit down to play a game like Patchwork with someone and introduce it to them, if it's their first time playing Patchwork, especially if it's their first time playing a board game in a while, I'm going to win that game very likely if I play all out. So then I either have to hold back to give them a good experience. There's a lot of stuff to consider there. When you have a cooperative game, you're all working together. So they're learning off of the moves you're making. They can't really make a bad move because they can you can help offset the moves that they're making. You can give them advice. They can ask for advice, whatever the case may be. And The Loop is also one that it's very colorful. The theme is attractive. It's got a pretty simple system in place. Like it looks a little bit more complex than it actually is when you start setting it up. But when it comes down to it, you have a hand of 3 cards that is open information on the table, and you're exhausting them once each to do their abilities on your turn. And everything you're doing is to eliminate clones, eliminate red cubes, and complete missions. The missions are clear cut. They'll be listed right there what you have to do. You're not going to have much confusion once you get going, other than learning all the artifacts as they come out and getting familiar with when to do your loop ability to sort of ready a lot of your cards and be able to use them again. So beyond that, but again, that's all stuff you can get help from if you're playing with someone who's played The Loop before, or is just a more experienced board gamer. This kind of felt like a Pandemic-esque version game where you have a bunch of stuff going wrong and you're just having to try to manage it all as best you can while completing what you want to complete. That has that feel to it for sure, but it's just done very effectively. It's a great cooperative game. So if you're a fan of cooperative games and say you even played Pandemic or other games like it, and you're looking for something else to jump into, maybe with younger audiences, maybe with someone who doesn't play games very often, or just for yourself because you can play it solo as well, highly recommend checking out The Loop. Once you play the base version and you find out perhaps you enjoy it and you really like it and you play through everything, then I would jump into the expansion because the expansion is just more of everything good. That is The Loop at number 8. Okay, What is number 7? I already forgot my phone over here that I'm using as my list is turning off on me. Okay, we have number 7 is a game that I played for the very first time, and I had heard about it for a while. I bought it actually a few months ago, and it's been sitting sort of behind my table here on the floor, and I've been waiting for an opportunity to play it because it has a campaign feel to it, or you are supposed to play with the same person or people over and over again, and you're opening envelopes each game. This is from Floodgate Games. I was gonna say Flood Out Games. Flood Out Games is a combination of Flat Out Games and Floodgate Games. Floodgate Games, and this is Decorum. Decorum is a really interesting game because it's essentially interior design, the game, in a really simplified package. You can play this with up to 4, but honestly, I think it's really meant to be a 2-player game. As a 2-player game, you're having to focus on what one person's doing and just try to figure out what their secret goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, and it fits the theme of cohabitation and having to make compromises for the style of your house. When you start playing with 3 or 4, it adds in a system called roommates, where people are kind of sharing different rooms in the building. It still works, and it comes with separate envelopes for 3 and 4, but 2 is what I played it at, and it was a great time. So Braden and I played this when I went over to his place to play games. I think we played like 7 games straight. 6 or 7, it was some large amount, opening up 7 envelopes. The games do go quick. It'll have the same feel as a bit like The Crew, if you've played The Crew Mission Deep Sea or The Crew Quest for Planet 9, where there are like 50 missions in the game, but when you sit down to play, you're not playing one mission. You're playing, a dozen missions in that game. I think this one, they take a little bit longer, but again, we played 7 games straight, and that was also after having already played the loop as well. So if we had only played Decorum, we probably could have got through like half the campaign right there. Essentially, you're going to have a house in the middle of the table with 4 different rooms. The rooms can be painted different colors. You're putting tiles on to indicate the paint color. Each room can hold 3 objects of different colors and different types. And every envelope is going to have a card that gives 2 roles. You're going to secretly hand out 1 role to each person, and they're going to give you like this quick little storyline breakdown, which is honestly, the story in here is very loose. I use story very loosely, but the amount of time they put into like crafting the characters and these funny scenarios and interesting moments, and when I was playing with Braden was really role-playing it up and talking as the characters and everything, so that added to it. It's really good. I think that they did a really good job with kind of attaching that theme to it and really going all in on the different groups or different pairs of people and how they're having to style their house and why they're making their decisions. But basically, you get your character on the other side. It's going to have a list of secret objectives that you have to complete, but you can't share that with the person you're playing with. And it's a cooperative game, so I need to get all my goals complete. Braden in this case needed to get all his goals complete, and only then are we completely satisfied and we win the game. So it's very difficult because you don't know what someone's going for. So someone will, the only information you can give is if I put like say a blue lamp in this room, Braden can say, oh, I really don't like that. I don't like that there at all. That's just not fitting with the room, however you want to word it. He's basically communicating to me that goes against one of the goals that's on his card. If he does like it, it's because it's matching one of the goals, and you can also be indifferent if it doesn't do anything. And so as you place and remove things, you can switch things out. You start to learn what someone is wanting. Oh, I realize that every time I put a yellow item in this room, they don't like it. Okay, so maybe yellow can't go in that room for them. You slowly start to figure things out. You have a sort of a timer based on the amount of rounds that you can't go past. I think it's like 30 or something like that, or 15. And every certain threshold, you'll also be able to share one of your goals with the other person to kind of help you out. You earn more points the earlier you finish. And there's tons of different modes, and there's envelopes to open. There's other things that you can unlock to kind of add to the game as you go. So the game's getting harder and evolving as you go, adding new components. Very interesting game. Honestly, if you've played games like The Crew, like My City, where you can sit down with one other, or I guess The Crew is 3 to 5, but in the case of My City, you can sit down with one other person, play a campaign of like 24 games, and just really enjoy the experience at your leisure. Decorum is kind of the same thing, but with an interior design theme and just a really interesting hidden goal aspect to it that I really like. Definitely going to come back and finish the entire campaign of Decorum. I'm really enjoying it, but it left a big impression on me. That is number 7, Decorum. All right, coming in at number 6 is another version of Azul, and this is Azul Summer Pavilion. And believe it or not, I had never actually played this version, so I played it for the first time, and it's really interesting having played Summer Pavilion after playing Queen's Garden for the first time, because out of any Azul versions, those two probably share the most DNA. Now, obviously, the tile grabbing is shared across all the Azuls, but in terms of gameplay mechanics and stuff beyond that, these two have a lot in common, just in terms of even where you're placing tiles on your board and sort of that circular pattern and on all the different spaces you can go to, and there being one in the center as well. But also in the way that you're buying or paying for placement of tiles that you're putting down. You're not just taking stuff and putting it on the board. You have to be able to pay for it with other tiles, which I really liked from Queen's Garden. Very interesting to see it done in Summer Pavilion. But in many ways, Summer Pavilion is just a simpler, more direct approach of things that are in Queen's Garden. So having played the more complicated version in a way, coming to Summer Pavilion, I feel like I picked it up quicker, I was able to jump into it quicker, and I really appreciated the idea of tackling everything I liked about Queen's Garden, or a lot of what I liked about Queen's Garden, in this really, slimmed down package, and not slimmed down in a negative way, but very much so in a positive way. I still love Queen's Garden. I love both these games. You'll have to wait until our Azul video to figure out which one I like more overall. But in general, it was just very interesting to have come at them in reverse order. I definitely want to keep coming back to Summer Pavilion. This is a really great version of Azul. It's one I might even end up wanting to own myself, because I turn to Azul very often as a game to play with not only people I'm introducing games to for the first time, but just as sort of like a great fallback option if you don't feel like learning something new and you want to, something tried and tested and true. Having Summer Pavilion fit that role as well, but still be able to play Azul and still have it be a little bit different, would be awesome. I obviously have Stained Glass of Sintra, but in many ways I feel like Summer Pavilion is actually, for me anyways, it was simpler to approach and to get into than Sintra was. So interesting that I approached it that way, but I really had such a great time with Summer Pavilion. That's why it's number 6 on my list. Cannot wait to play it again. Okay, we're going into the top 5. Now, number 5, really interesting game that I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to get to play until Carlo was able to acquire a copy from our friends over at Foster the Meeple a little while ago. He's played it before. He finally introduced it to me. This is Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation. This is a Reiner Knizia Lord of the Rings game. I didn't even know this existed for the longest time. When Carlo told me about it, I was blown away and really excited to try it. So happy that I was able to finally play it. We played 2 games back to back because it's actually recommended that you play as both sides. This is a 2-player dueling game, and each side has different unique characters and abilities. So it's recommended you do both and add up your score. So we did do both. I played both sides of it, got a really good feel for the game. What an interesting game! It's like I said, it's a 2-player only game, and you're essentially each starting on one end of this map and trying to get your characters to the opposite end, as well as eliminate other characters on the way. But there's a sort of multiple victory conditions there. One side has like Frodo and Sam and all those characters from the Lord of the Rings, Pippin and whatnot, and the other side is the it's been so long since I watched Lord of the Rings, I've been putting off having to give them a title because I can't remember what they're called, but like the dark side of this Lord of the Rings confrontation. I'm gonna receive so much flack from people who are Lord of the Rings fans in the comment. I just know it. I'm so sorry. It's been so long since I watched the movies. But yeah, anyways, so it's really interesting because a lot of these characters are flipped so that you can't see who they are. So you won't actually know where they're moving Frodo or Sam, for instance, where that side of the board, their ultimate goal is for Frodo to get all the way to the other side of the board with the ring. And so you're sometimes using characters' abilities to charge ahead and sort of breach the line and jump onto other characters. It might not be the one you're looking for, but you're getting information that way, but you might have also sacrificed your unit because now they're in a vulnerable position. I think it's the Balrog that wants to be in the Mines of Moria, if I'm not mistaken. And so if that character's there and someone tries to cross, it triggers something, whereas if that character's in a different spot, that is no longer triggered. There's a bunch of interesting mechanics at play. There's one character who can attack adjacently. Normally you can't attack adjacent spots. They have to be in front of you. But again, because you don't know which character is which, you might put yourself in a situation and find yourself being attacked adjacent. There's just a whole lot of really cool stuff going on for such a simple game, and the thematics of the Lord of the Rings come through really well. The fact that they've tied it into, this character wanting to get to the other side to be able to deliver the ring to the mountain and everything, and trying to stop them. Like, it all works within the theme, and yet even without the Lord of the Rings theme, this still could have worked. It's just, I'm almost curious which came first. That they have the entire, gameplay decided and said, hey, this would really fit the Lord of the Rings theme, or did it come after just because of how well it integrates? Regardless, super easy to game to pick up, super fun to play. I am dying to play this again just to see how much longevity there is, how much variability is between games, which side I enjoy playing more, or if there is one that I like drastically enjoy more than the other, or if they seem imbalanced to each other. Very excited to explore this. That is Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation. All right, coming in at number 4, this is one I do have here, a very exciting game I want to talk about, and this is called Veiled Fate. So Veiled Fate is a really interesting game. If you know me, and I think I've talked about this a few times, I really enjoy board games that have hidden roles, hidden information. It's one of the reasons I love One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I played The Resistance. I played Secret Hitler. I mean, the list goes on. There's more I'm not naming, but I've played a lot of those hidden role games. I always have fun, and generally with those games, you want to play with a very large amount of players, because the more players there are, the harder it is to discern who's who, the more roles are in the game, and so on. Veiled Fate is a role, they call it a game of hidden influence. So everyone is going to be given a character. You're going to be a demigod. There's going to be a circular board on the table, kind of like the Loop almost, honestly, where you can move around all the areas around, but then you can also go to the city in the middle. And there are going to be 9 miniatures on the board. Each one represents a different demigod. No matter how many players you play with, all 9 are in the game, and every player is secretly given a card that basically gives you one of these demigods, but no one knows who is who. So if I got the card that I am the orange demigod, no one else knows that except for me. On your turn when you're taking actions, a lot of what you're doing is just moving these demigods around and putting them onto cards to complete quests. But you can move any of the 9 demigods. So what you're trying to do is get your single demigod in positions to gain points, to gain influence, to be able to move up the track. I think you have to hit 12 to win, or else it's just whoever has the most points at the end of the game. But you don't want it to be obvious that you're trying to influence your specific demigod, because if you are, everyone's going to catch on, oh, Dylan is orange, and they're going to just start preventing me from doing everything. And there's abilities you can use. There's god powers where you can portal demigods off of quests. So if people know I'm orange and I put myself on an advantageous quest, they'll just portal me off. So the longer you can go keep that information secret, the better you're going to perform in the game. But it's really hard to figure out ways to say, I want to gain points, but I don't want to do so in an obvious way. You have to do it by like moving multiple demigods at the same time and saying, well, I guess I'll move this one as well. And then you have to play off of what other people are suspecting. So in our game, the coolest thing about it, we did a 3-player game. It played surprisingly well at 3. Early on, I was playing with my friend Corbin and Carlo. And early on, I was orange. And so Corbin identified early on that he thought Carlo was orange, because Carlo made some move where he moved yellow and orange together or something. And so right away he said, oh, that must mean you're either orange or yellow. And he said, yeah, maybe. And somehow we got onto the fact that he was orange. And I played along because I thought, hey, if you guys want to think Carlo's orange, then I can somehow sneak around with this information and use it to my advantage. And sure enough, we went the entire game with everyone thinking, or with me pretending that I think Carlo's orange and Corbin believing Carlo's orange, to eventually have me reveal I was orange. And I think I won by 1 point. Like, it was a very close game, but no one knew with 100% certainty who anyone was at the end of the game. We all played it pretty shrewd, and there's so many, look, with 9 demigods moving around, it's really hard to know for sure who's doing what and keep tabs on everything everyone's doing. But for how big for the size of the box, for how big the board is, for how all these miniatures, for everything in the game, this is a very simple game. I mean, I think on Board Game Geek list says like a 2 weight out of 5, and honestly, after having played it, it's pretty much bang on. All you're really doing is you're moving demigods or using their powers. Those are the only 2 options you have on the turn. And with the movement, you're just moving on to quests where you kind of lock them into these circles that are on quest cards, and afterwards you're adding cards into piles that are going to be part of a vote pile for that quest. Whichever side of the quest gets more votes, that's where this locked-in character is going to go to, and it's either going to be a positive thing or a negative thing. So you're voting in a way where you want these things to be pressed based on which one's yours, who you think other people are, and everyone else is influencing the vote as well. You can manipulate the deck, you can add random cards to it. It's a lot of fun. I cannot wait to come back to this. Specifically, I really want to play this with like 5 or 6 people. I think getting all the way up to like the max player count, which is 8, so you'd have like 8 human characters and 1 non-controlled character, would be a little bit too much. Maybe not. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think 5 or 6 could be that sweet spot of there's so many human players manipulating the board that it's hard to keep track, and you're suspecting so many different people. Even if one person gets called out for being a color. There's so many other things that play that it might not be super, super obvious. Regardless, I am so excited to dive into this game more. I could not be more impressed from a first play. Really great game. And again, it's a game that captures that hidden role aspect, but in a package that works at low player counts, which is so welcome. And it just does it in a very different way. So if you haven't heard of this game, I think it's a 2022 title. I believe it's been delivered to backers now, but I'm not 100% sure. We got sent from Ivy Studio. So big thanks to them for sending us this copy to check out and review. But regardless, such an exciting game. Cannot wait to play it again. That is Veiled Fate. All right, getting into the top 3. The next one we're going to talk about is another 2022 title that we just got our hands on. This is a reprint, a remake, a remaster, whatever you want to call it, re-implementation of an older title, I think from like 2012, which was Libertalia. And this is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. So played this for the first time, and I've never played Libertalia, the original. Carlo has. I believe he played it on Board Game Arena. Played a 3-player game of this, and I was really, really happy with it. So first things first, the component quality, the overall production value of this game is just top-notch. I've come to expect that from Stonemaier Games. No different here. Everything about, playing with the cards, using the pieces, the board, everything feels super satisfying, looks great. Just a great game to kind of set up on the table and play with a group. But the actual gameplay itself, again, this is another case of a very simple gameplay flow, just being really effective and tons of variety and replay value to come back to. Essentially, everyone's going to have the same 40 cards. There's 40 characters, each with their own unique ability. At the start of the game, one person's going to randomly select, I think it's 6 of them. I think you have a 6-card hand, 6 or 7, and they're going to randomly select them and then tell every other player what numbers they picked, and everyone's going to also pick those numbers, so that everyone starts with the same 6 characters in their hand. Then you have this board that's going to be sort of where you're placing cards, and it's going to determine the order in which these cards' abilities come into play. So there's numbers on every single card from 1 to 40. We're all going to pick a card and then reveal it at the same time, and we're going to order them from lowest number to highest number. From lowest to highest, we're going to trigger all the cards' abilities, but then from highest to lowest, you're going to get it to pick some of the treasure tiles that are on the board. So you have to kind of play cards thinking, okay, what's more important to me this round? Is it using these cards' ability because of what it's going to do for me? Or is it being the first to choose the treasure tiles because there's treasure tiles out there I really don't want, or a negative, or there's ones out there I really do want and for what I'm going for? You're weighing all that with a single card play, which gives a ton of choice and a ton of thinking power going on to such a simple choice of just picking one card out of 6 in your hands. But then it comes into play with which treasure tiles you're getting. Like, are you getting maps and you're trying to get more of those? There's actual abilities for each of these treasure tiles on the board, and there's 2 sides of the board. So we play on the stormy side, which is supposed to be more volatile. There's also like the calm side, which has a completely different abilities. There's actual tiles you can put on that change those abilities as well. So there's a ton of variety in the ability of these tiles, in which character cards you get dealt every single game, the combination that they get dealt in. Just because you've seen card number 39, you might not have seen it in conjunction with card 17 or 6 or whatever, and seen how a game flows like that. As well, in between rounds, I may not have used all the same cards you have. So if you use card 35 and I didn't, going to the next round, I keep card 35 even though it's in your discard pile, which now I have cards that you started the game with and I haven't played yet. So that we start to differentiate our hands a bit, the game changes. Honestly, overall, it's a game that plays quickly. It has a really easy teach associated with it, and it is a ton of fun. I honestly cannot wait to play this again. I want to play the BGA version just so I can compare the original Libertalia to this one. I think the biggest change is there's this reputation track, and that breaks ties. It worked phenomenally well, and Carlo, having played both, said that having the reputation track, it was a game changer in the sense that it just is a better way to break those ties, and a cool other thing to keep track of. It also determines your starting income at the start of every round. If you have a lower reputation, you start with more money, and vice versa. Overall, awesome game. Cannot wait to play it again. We're going to be checking out a whole bunch more, and you'll probably be seeing this either in its own separate review or in an Own It Play It Skip It video, or some way you'll see more content on Libertalia in the near future. All right, top 2 games last month. These were both great plays. I wafted on them going back and forth. I honestly could have picked either one. But what ended up landing at number 2 is a game that we were late to the party on. We played for the first time, I think, a couple months ago. This is only my second play of it. It came out, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. Beloved game, several expansions. It continues to be one of the most popular board games in the community. I finally played a second game of Root, but also with the Marauder expansion pack this time. So, last time I played, we played a 4-player game. Carlo and I played with Raj and his partner, and my friend Raj and his partner, and we did the 4 base classes. So it was 4 classes in the game, and we tried them all. Or I shouldn't say we individually tried them all. We got to see them all in action. I am going to forget the name of them all. I was the Bluebirds. Was it the Airy Dynasty or something Dynasty? And I think Carlo was the Marquis de Cat. But we saw them all from the base box. This time, I had the Marauder expansion, so I opted to put them out on the table and said, hey, if anyone wants to play with the expansion classes, I know how to play them. I looked up all the rules. It's not really adding much more rules complexity. It's just a different class you have to learn, and you're going to have to learn the class either way. Both the other players chose base classes, so I chose one of the new ones from the Marauder expansion, which I'm going to forget the name of, and I'm going to look now. The Lord of the Hundreds is the one I used. This game of Root was very different than the last one I played. I came in with a little bit more experience and a little bit of know-how on how Root plays, how you're supposed to earn points, and where you have to spend your attention. But I was also playing with a brand new class from one of the newer expansions that added a whole new level of complexity to the game. And it was very, very, and I don't mean more complexity as in like too complicated, just a lot of different things to think about than the first time I played. So it was so much fun. It has the same thing I love about Oath, in that every game is different, even in just what the win condition is going to be and how everyone's going to, approach the game and what changes in the midway point. We ended up getting to a point in the game where I think I was tied for first place at 14, and the player using, I can't remember the name of the class, the Woodland Alliance. The player using the Woodland Alliance was barely on the board yet, had very low points, which is kind of, from what I understand, how they start. And there was a dominance card that came into play, and dominance cards are essentially other win conditions that you can choose to pick up, and you remove your point token from the board, and now this is your way to win the game instead. You change it. And I'm tied for first place, but a win condition comes up that I currently have. I had to be in control of 3 bunny territories, and have those in my control at the start of my turn. And I looked at the board situation. Not only did I have them, the Woodland Alliance isn't on the board and is in no way able to stop me. And the Marquis de Cat, which is the other player, could, but they would have to sacrifice a lot of what they're doing to pull it off. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go for the dominance card. I didn't do that in the first game. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna see if it works. And I took it, and it backfired. I spent the rest of the game trying and butting my head up against the wall, trying to keep all 3 to the start of my turn, and they kept finding a way to take one away from me, just little by little. But it was fun. Like, it was a fun win condition to try to go for, and then I ended up changing and saying, you know what, I'm not going to go for this win condition directly, even though it's my only way to win the game. I'm going to start terrorizing a bunch of other stuff that's going on, put them in a position that makes it harder for them to come out and full on stop me, and then go back to trying to hold, all 3. So that made my game very different. The player who played the Woodland Alliance started super slow and then suddenly ramped up and got to the point where they were, I think, the last turn they took before the Marquis de Cat player ended up winning, but the last turn before that player won, they needed like 3 or 4 points to win, the Woodland Alliance. And there was a play they could have done if I hadn't destroyed one of their sympathy tokens on the last turn or something like that, or one of their bases. They would have won that turn. I destroyed that base. It made it so they could only get a couple points. They were just shy of victory, and then the Marquis player ended up getting exactly 30. It's just this really amazing struggle. I mean, I don't have to tell any of you. I'm sure most of you have played Root out there, but it's just this amazing struggle of, multiple goals in mind, multiple win conditions potentially, everyone approaching things a little bit differently, even when you're using the same classes you have before. Obviously, this is one of the expansion classes. There's tons more out there to explore. I feel like this was the game that really flipped the switch for me on Root. The first time I played it, I thought, yeah, this was fun, but I don't quite still see what the fuss was about. Having played it a second time and exploring a new faction as well, I think I've been calling them classes, exploring a new faction, it really hit, I get it now. I get that it's so interesting, all the different factions you can approach the game with, but also who you're playing against too, and how that's going to change how you play, and how that person chooses to play their faction as well. There's so much to explore in this game, and I feel like the more people I introduce it to, the more my friends I play with, the less I'll have to teach the rules, and the more it'll just be sitting down to play a game of Root, and that's kind of where I'm hoping to get to, that every so often we can just play a game of Root, maybe a quick refresher of the rules, but no need to do a full teach, is where I would love to get with this game, because I think then I'd be able to crank out a game, or finish them in an hour and a half, instead of it being like a 3-hour affair because of rules teaching new players and all that kind of stuff. So Such a great time with Root. I'm so glad I played it again. I'm going to be playing a bunch more, but I think after I've explored everything I can in the base game Marauder expansion, I'm going to be trying some of the other expansions and seeing what those factions have to offer. But I'm on board with Root. I understand now. I get it. It's a great game. I love it. Cannot wait to play more. All right. Last game we're going to talk about, I don't own. This is Carlo's Copy. It's a game that has been talked about a lot. How old did it come out? In 2020, I think. 2020 or 2021, I believe it came out. This is also a game of like hidden role and hidden influence, and this is called Mind Management. What an amazing session we had. So it was myself, Braden, and Carlo that played. Carlo, I'm already forgetting that, like, I don't have the box in front of me to even refer to here, but it was Braden and I against Carlo. Carlo is the hidden movement person, and we were trying to discern where he is and which square he is on the grid that's on the map. So essentially in this game, you have this big, huge board with different squares. Each square has different landmarks and monuments and specific items in the squares that you have to kind of keep track of. And one person is moving in the squares without actually showing where they're moving. They have a hidden screen, and behind the screen, they're marking where they're going. It's up to, in this case, myself and Braden, to figure out where Carlo is on the board by asking certain questions of him. And it's a very usually tied to things that are on each of the squares. So there could be a fountain that shows up on 6 different squares, and you can ask, have you or reveal if you have passed or gone over a fountain. But if he's gone over multiple fountains, he can choose which one he reveals and which one he doesn't, which means then we have to say, oh, he's revealed this fountain, so he could be around here. But we have to think, okay, but when did he hit this fountain on his journey? Was it his second move of the game? Was it his 8th move of the game? Because that determines where he's moved to, because he could be far away from this fountain now. So you have to ask questions you have to really think about the questions you're asking to try to form a path of where this person ended up. And then you can start putting things on the board and marking them, saying, we think this is the 2nd spot he went, this is the 4th spot he went. Me and Braden eventually caught Carlo, but it took so much deduction to really look and say, okay, we know he's been here. If that is going to be the 3rd spot he went, he would have had to gone here, here, and here, or here and here first, but we know he didn't do that because of this, which means that can't be the 3rd spot he went, which means it's the 5th. And if that's the 5th, then suddenly that means this is the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd right here. Now we have his first 5 paths, and we took a couple turns to map that out. Now we figure out where he was after movement 5, and we're currently on movement 9. So we say, okay, he's 4 spots away from here. It could be in any direction. This spot over here could be diagonally away from it too. So you slowly get closer and closer, and we are eventually able to trap him in a spot. And this was just the introductory scenario. I mean, there's so much to explore in this game. We've scratched literally the surface of this game based on everything that's in this box and the additional cards you start adding in and the other abilities you start adding into the game. So there's so much more to explore. It's a testament to the fact that we played the introduction scenario, the first scenario of the game, and it's already number 1 on my list from last year. I think if you're not someone who likes hidden role type games and the hidden movement games, especially if you don't like being a single person against everyone. I know that can be intimidating for a lot of people. Even games like Mysterium, being the one person that's having to give the clues, especially if you have 5 other people at the table or 4 other people at the table, can be intimidating. It can be make someone anxious and stressed. So in that case, maybe this game is not for you. But for me, someone who loves that, I not only want to explore the game more as the person trying to uncover this person, the other player, but I want to be that player that's hiding around the board, try the game from that perspective, see how it changes with all the new cards that get introduced and whatnot. So it feels like there's so much to explore in this game that even though we have so many games to play, and it might be a little bit before we play it again, or we play enough times to really properly have our final thoughts about the game, I'm just so excited to explore it more and to play it more. And it was just when you get right down to it, it was just fun. It was just a ton of fun. That's usually what hidden role, hidden influence type games are for me. They're just fun. I don't care who wins. I don't care, if someone gets revealed or accidentally reveals their role too early or screws up. It's fun to try to uncover someone. You end up laughing. You end up sitting there like not able to talk, looking down, wanting to scream because of something someone's doing. Like, it's just so much fun. Mind Management was no different. Cannot wait to come back to it. That was my #1 play of last month. That's it. Top 10 games of the month. there you have it. Let me know what you played last month and what your top 5, top 10, your favorite play of the month is. Just put it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear. And out of these 10 games, are you surprised the way I ordered them? Are you surprised I hadn't played some of them yet? Which ones have you played and what are your thoughts on them? Really, let me hear it. Put anything in the comments you want about these games. I would love to talk to you about it some more. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.